On this Thursday night, Winnipeg's police chief pressured to step down. The backlash to the decision not to search a landfill for murdered Indigenous women.
The message you are sending is that Indigenous women don't matter.
Alberta's Sovereignty Act passes.
It's not like Ottawa is a national government.
What's been removed from it and why the debate about its overreach is still raging. Finally free the prisoner swap that led to the release of U.S. basketball star Brittney Griner from a Russian prison. Plus, the Canadian geoscientist who helped unearth the planet's oldest DNA in Greenland. The doors this could open.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with the search for 3 murdered Indigenous women in Winnipeg. The province has asked the operators of a private landfill site to pause operations. The Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg is where police suspect the remains of 2 of the murdered women are located. Their families, along with Indigenous leaders in Manitoba, have been calling on Winnipeg's police chief to resign because the force has said searching that site was not feasible.
And here you are, once again, creating unmarked graves of Indigenous peoples. That's wrong. How dare you tell us that you cannot find our missing woman?
Today, the federal minister of Crown Indigenous Relations said the women's families deserve the answers they're looking for.
Nobody should have to go through this pain and through the re-traumatizing process to uncover the truth and get to justice. Nobody should have to search for their mother in the trash, and no human should be treated like trash.
Melissa Ridgen has our top story tonight from Winnipeg.
Not only have you refused to search these landfills, you have presented no alternative routes for how we can give these women peace.
That's Kira Harris, one of the daughters of victim Morgan Harris, calling for Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smyth to step down for his department's decision to not recover bodies of Indigenous women believed murdered by an alleged serial killer and dumped in a landfill last spring. Police forensics inspector Cam McKidd said more than a month passed when police believed the 3 victims' remains ended up in the landfill and when police learned of it. In that time, they say 9,000 tons of heavy construction mud, 1,500 tons of animal remains, and 250 tons of asbestos were dumped there while heavy construction equipment packed it all down. Police estimate the remains of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and an unidentified woman the elders have named Buffalo Woman are somewhere in a 4-acre area under at least 40 feet of densely compacted waste.
Our intent from day one, from minute one, is to conduct a search. There are times, and this I believe is one of them, where a search just simply wasn't feasible for the reasons I've described today.
But the million-dollar question is, would police at least try to find these women if they weren't Indigenous? And then, do they have a responsibility, if they believe they're in the landfill, to recover them and to return them to their families?
The message you are sending to the greater community, to the non-Indigenous community, is that Indigenous women don't matter. That if somebody wants to target and hurt our women, that they can dump them in the landfill and no one will look for them.
Comparisons have been made to the Picton Farm in Port Coquitlam, BC, where forensic teams spent nearly 2 years scouring a much larger 6.5-hectare area for remains of murdered women. Premier Heather Stephenson and Mayor Scott Gillingham held a press conference late in the day to announce that operations at the landfill are going to stop while they determine next steps.
Today's about the Premier and I coming together, the city and the province coming together to try to recognize the need that families have.
Smyth hasn't responded to demands for his resignation or requests for comment. 35-year-old Jeremy Skibicki is in custody facing first-degree murder charges in the death of the 3 women, as well as 24-year-old Rebecca Contois. His lawyer says he will plead not guilty. How he knew the women has not been made public. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
Alberta's United Conservative Party has quickly passed its controversial Sovereignty Act, though it removed a provision that would have granted extraordinary powers to the cabinet of Premier Danielle Smith. She describes the bill as resetting the relationship with the Prime Minister and the federal government. Indigenous leaders say they were not consulted, and they've called for it to be scrapped.
It is infringing upon our rights, and we will not stand idly by. We will not allow it to happen.
This is a warning to Canadians. If you care about these lands, if you care about your country.
The bill could allow Alberta to ignore treaty rights and federal laws. Eric Sorensen reports on the debate continuing to rage over the Sovereignty Act and the intentions of Alberta's Premier.
Mr. Speaker,
with a Conservative majority in the Alberta legislature, the Sovereignty Act passed easily.
Motion is carried and so ordered.
Sweeping powers for cabinet were stripped out, but the act means the province will try to override any federal law from Ottawa that the province believes harms Alberta. And Premier Danielle Smith says she'll have the constitutional authority to do so.
It's not like Ottawa is a national government. The way our country works is that we are a federation of sovereign, independent jurisdictions. They are one of those signatories to the Constitution, and the rest of us are signatories to the Constitution and have a right to exercise our sovereign powers in our own area of jurisdiction.
Alberta could, for example, deem federal environmental legislation as harmful to Alberta's oil economy. The Prime Minister sees a divisive political move, and for now, he's not biting.
The Sovereignty Act in Alberta is being moved forward as very much a political tool to try and pick a fight with the federal government. And I'm not interested in fighting with the Alberta government.
Indigenous leaders see the Alberta Act and a new law in Saskatchewan over natural resources as a threat to their inherent rights.
When legislation like this comes forward, the Sovereignty Act, the SAS First Act, and without consulting First Nations first, that's just disrespectful. And we are tired of being disrespected.
At some point, Ottawa will have to reckon with the growing push for more provincial powers in laws like the Sovereignty Act.
The rest of Canada should watch carefully to see what the government does with this bill now, because this is really starting to define what federalism really means in Canada.
On the day that her portrait was unveiled as former Premier, Rachel Notley promised to repeal the act if she's re-elected. So the first real battle could be fought not with Ottawa, but within Alberta. The outcome of a provincial election next spring could give momentum to the Sovereignty Act or kill it. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
The federal government is taking steps that it says are aimed at strengthening childcare in this country. The Families Minister, Karina Gould, introduced Bill C-35 today. If passed, it would enshrine the principles of a national childcare system into federal law. That could help make it harder to change or cut should another party take power. Mackenzie Gray is looking into this for us. Mackenzie.
Donna, the Liberals are trying to make their daycare plan Pierre Poilievre-proof, attempting to brand it as politically poisonous to kill one of their signature social programs.
This cements our vision of childcare, and I would say Canadians' vision of childcare.
That vision now includes legislation and commitments to long-term funding for childcare. But Bill C-35 doesn't back that promise up with new money or set any national standards. That's left to the 13 individual deals the feds cut with provinces and territories. Deals Karina Gould believes would be difficult for future governments to walk away from.
Conservatives wouldn't be able to hide this. They would have to very publicly tell Canadians that they do not believe in affordable childcare. They will not be supporting families, and they will not be building a system.
It's happened before. Stephen Harper canceled childcare agreements Paul Martin struck with the provinces, opting for tax credits instead. Current Conservatives aren't committing to taking the Harper approach, but do want the Liberals to make some changes.
The current approach isn't working. For example, in the province of Alberta, 67% of operators can't access the funding. I need childcare.
For parents like Alana Powell, the biggest issue is finding a childcare spot. Her maternity leave is ending in February, with her daughter Penelope still on a daycare waiting list.
To imagine that Penelope's just going to have to be at home watching mommy work or, spending time in front of screens, it's just going to be really challenging to try and balance her needs and do my job full time.
The legislation is also a key element of the supply and confidence agreement that Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh struck. The NDP saying they'll support the bill, Donna, applauding the Liberals for focusing their plan on not-for-profit spaces.
Okay, Mackenzie in Ottawa, thanks. The RCMP has suspended a procurement contract with an Ontario-based company that has ties to China because of concerns about national security. The $500,000 contract was awarded to Sinclair Technologies to supply radio frequency equipment to the RCMP. Sinclair's parent company is controlled by the Chinese firm Hytera, which the Chinese government has a 10% stake in. Hytera faces espionage charges in the U.S. The government says other contracts given to Sinclair will be reviewed. After months of high-level negotiations between Moscow and Washington, American basketball star Brittney Griner is headed back to the U.S. The American Olympian was arrested in February on drug charges. That led to a campaign by her family, teammates, and celebrities to bring her home. Farah Nasser has more on the prisoner swap that made it happen.
Do you know where I'm heading to?
No.
No?
No.
You fly back home.
To the U.S.
To the U.S.
WNBA star Brittney Griner on a plane heading for the United States after being detained in Russia for the past 9 months. But her release comes at a price in one of the most high-profile prisoner swaps between the two countries since the Cold War, happening at this mutually agreed-upon location in Abu Dhabi. Griner arrested at the airport last time she was heading home for having less than a gram of cannabis oil in exchange for notorious Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout, known as the Merchant of Death, who was serving a 25-year sentence for conspiring to kill Americans by selling weapons to terrorists.
This is a day we've worked toward for a long time.
Griner's wife and President Joe Biden broke the news to the two-time Olympic gold medalist this morning.
Over the last 9 months, you all have been so privy to one of the darkest moments of my life. And so today I'm just standing here overwhelmed with emotions.
Questions remain regarding what the White House is doing about the other Americans still in Russian custody. Canadian-born Paul Whelan, a former Marine and businessman, was in Moscow attending a friend's wedding in 2018 when he was detained by Russian intelligence, accused of being a spy, a charge the U.S. denies.
Sadly, for totally illegitimate reasons, Russia is treating Paul's case differently than Brittney's.
Whelan spoke with CNN after learning of Griner's release, saying he was disappointed not to be part of the deal.
I would hope that he and his administration would do everything they could to get me home, regardless of the price they might have to pay at this point.
This was not a choice of which American to bring home. The choice was one or none.
Unlike Griner, who will be home for the holidays, Whelan's family worries he won't be able to survive another year in Russian custody. Farah Nasser, Global News, Washington.
To Saudi Arabia now, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has welcomed China's president for an official visit. Xi Jinping was greeted by jets, cannons, and cavalry. His three-day diplomatic visit is intended to strengthen ties between Beijing and Riyadh. The two leaders signed a partnership agreement as well as multiple deals on trade, technology, and energy, with more expected in the coming days. In the U.S., Congress has passed landmark legislation to protect same-sex and interracial marriage.
The motion is adopted.
The Respect for Marriage Act got through both chambers with enough Republican support for it to pass. It codifies federal protection for same-sex and interracial marriage. Support for the act gained momentum after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June. There were fears the court could take aim at same-sex marriage. According to the latest census data, there are more than 1.2 million same-sex households in the U.S. Automation Nation coming up, the rising role robots play in our food supply chain. Automation and artificial intelligence play a role in nearly every facet of our lives, including the production of the food we eat. Over the years, they've become integral to how products get from the farm to our dinner table. In part 2 of our Automation Nation series, Ann Gaviola looks at how robots are taking on jobs humans can't or won't do.
Getting to the root of soaring food inflation includes a close look at what it takes to produce what we eat.
It's becoming more and more difficult for us to have large labor forces that are willing to stand in a 30-degree field and pull weeds out of the ground. Robotics is just a necessary next step.
Nearly 3/4 of agribusinesses in Canada are short-staffed. Nexus Robotics founder Tarek Greenan, who's developing a self-driving weed-pulling robot, says machines are the solution.
If we want to have food that's reasonably priced, we need these farms to continue to have great yields, and we need these jobs to be done.
Robots are involved in every part of the food supply chain, starting with agriculture for harvesting and monitoring crops. Livestock farmers are using robotics to feed, milk, manage, and clean animals. During processing, raw food is cleaned, sorted, cooked or baked, packaged, and transported, and robotics and automation are already well integrated into the warehousing stage. Loblaw recently launched its fleet of semi-autonomous delivery trucks. No human in the driver's seat, though there is a safety pilot on standby on the passenger side. This is a partnership with Silicon Valley company Gatik, whose goal is to move to a remote driver model.
So we have today 5 trucks operating back and forth on these routes, typically operating 12 hours daily, 7 days a week.
The company's touted a clean safety record after 2 years, logging more than 150,000 deliveries. These temperature-controlled trucks are already being used by Walmart in the U.S., but Loblaw is a Canadian first. Pandemic supply chain challenges have accelerated the adoption of automation. Minimizing human handling of food is valued now more than ever, and so is reliability. Table A5. We're only starting to understand the impact of this shift on the labor market and the number of jobs lost. And this may make a dent in food inflation, but taste and service won't be the same without the human touch. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
DNA discovery ahead. The 2 million-year-old ecosystem discovered in Greenland. There has been a huge breakthrough in DNA research with a connection to a Canadian university. Nova Scotia's Dalhousie University is part of an international research team being credited with discovering the world's oldest DNA samples. They were uncovered in Greenland. And as Ross Lord reports, they give us a glimpse at life 2 million years ago.
For scientist John Goss, contributing to a big advancement in DNA research is a career highlight. At his laboratory in Dalhousie University, Goss analyzed isotopes from quartz collected in northern Greenland, concluding it's about 2 million years old. His work helped an international research team conclude DNA they extracted from nearby clay is the same age.
We just have been so limited to, really the last 1 million years. That was the oldest until this study. And now we think we open up the doors to much older.
The DNA collected by the team is also revealing.
They sequenced some animals that we didn't expect to be there, and one was the American mastodon. And until this study, it was really limited to parts of North America.
How the mastodon got to northern Greenland is among many new questions arising from gaining access to 1 million more years of evidence.
I don't know what Ancestry.ca is going to do with all this new data, but we'll be able to push back our knowledge about our entire ancestry.
The possibilities, he says, are endless.
How far back can we trace the human genome? And what was the pattern, the real pattern of migration? We've got ideas based on a limited number of bones and other artifacts that we have, but can we really improve that?
Next up, delving deeper into artifacts that are even more mind-bending.
This is a 4 million year old tree stump.
No.
And yeah.
It feels like any other, and looks like any other tree or tree stump, right?
Yeah.
Wow. The stump is from Ellesmere Island in Canada's high Arctic. Goss hopes to join DNA experts on an expedition there in the new year to collect new samples from a long, long time ago. Ross Lord, Global News, Halifax.
Royal revelations next. Reactions to the Harry and Meghan show on Netflix. Canadian singer Celine Dion has postponed her tour dates and revealed she has a rare, incurable neurological disorder. It's called stiff person syndrome.
I've been dealing with problems with my health for a long time. And it's been really difficult for me to face these challenges and to talk about everything that I've been going through.
Stiff person syndrome makes her muscles spasm uncontrollably and has made it difficult for her to walk and sing. Dion says she has a team of doctors working with her. The disorder can be treated to slow its progression. The 20-time Juno Award-winning artist postponed the spring portion of her upcoming tour to 2024, and she's canceled 8 shows slated for this summer. Prince Harry and Meghan's series on Netflix is out. The first 3 episodes of a highly anticipated series about their story and their rocky relationship with the royal family. It's supposed to be a tell-all that promises the truth, but some see it as a self-serving reality show. Crystal Gamansing reports on the reaction.
There's a new feeding frenzy for royal watchers.
There's a hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
I feel they're just doing it for money, and so no, I don't agree with them.
I think at the moment, Harry needs to mend broken bridges with his family.
Harry and Meghan didn't include any bombshells, at least not in the first 3 available episodes. But the Netflix documentary did get people talking.
There was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
The successful American actress quickly became the bad guy in what started as a widely loved love story.
It's just an air of racism to it. It's just, you don't get the same level of scrutiny for other members of the household.
I just do think it's fair that they're telling their version and speaking their truth.
Prince Harry talks about his earliest memories are of being swarmed by paparazzi, the family baggage he brings to relationships, and how they both sacrificed everything to join the other's world. It was in February 2021 when Buckingham Palace announced the couple would be leaving active royal life. The king, however, had a full day of work.
Have you spoken to Prince Harry? I'm sure there has been a lot that's gone wrong, but there is in every family, and you just shut up and talk amongst yourselves. You don't air it to the world.
The documentary won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it does play on what the tabloids have been dining out on for decades. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Whitehorse. Santa driving a truck lit up for the holidays. We'd love to see your festive Canada photos. Please email them to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Jeff Semple will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I'll see you Saturday for the new reality. Bye-bye.